Hello, Kim from Intuitiview. Long time no see.
Long time no see. How's it going?
It's going well. How's it going with you?
I can't complain. Pretty good.
Are the politics keeping you busy?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I have all kinds of questions for you.
Oh,
'Cause
okay.
I
Well, I
wondered
that's
from
why I'm here.
when we last spoke. But before I bring up the politics, uh, I hear that you do a mentoring of.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about that? Because it's very interesting. Um, the idea of
So,
mentoring people.
I have recorded classes, then we've had classes that Debbie and I teach. And
Mm.
so it's for those people who are students if they want to continue learning and developing their skills. But I also have people that just are kind of like, I've never been able to connect with my guides. I don't know what I'm doing. And so what I'll do is I will connect with their guides and I will let them know what their dominant ability is, how to use it, how to connect, how they've been trying to connect. Usually they've been trying to connect or they have connected and they just don't realize it. Um, and mediumship. Some people are wanting to learn mediumship just to connect with the other side, relatives or friends or whatever. And so I just kind of start the process. I usually give them homework, to develop whatever they're trying to develop or to continue developing. And that's it. And usually I'll say like once a year, once every 6 months is plenty because usually you want to go away and work on it. And that's the point is to get you so that you're getting your own answers and your own connection. And it doesn't have to be through me or through anybody. You can just get it when you get a reading when you want to and not feel like you have to all the time. So,
So what would you say is the essence or the guiding principle in what you teach? You know how you I mean the notion of guides. That's the I guess I would call it the outer shell or the outer. Well, that's how I'm seeing it. Perhaps not. How
right,
would you
right.
explain it?
I think that the whole idea is that the best way to be in flow is to get some kind of understanding or guidance from whatever you want to call it, your higher self, a higher, more alert, aware knowing that we all have and possess or can get to. So I feel like when you're in touch with that on a regular basis, your life tends to have a flow to it that I can't quite explain.
Mm.
It just makes things easier. And a lot of times you can be directed either away from things that would not serve you, or if you've gotten into something that you're like, oh, why did I even do this? It's a mess. There'll be a guiding forces to help you take what you need to take out of it so that it does serve you and then move on. But there's something about being connected regularly and consistently that makes your life flow easier. And that's really what it's about because we're all going to go through stuff here. There's no getting out of here. Well, we're not going to get out alive, FYI, but we're not going to get out of here without a lot of bumps and scrapes, too. We're all going to go through loss. We're all going to go through change. We're all going to go through all of these things that we have to as humans. And um, this is the having a constant connection to that higher self or that higher source is the best way I've found to just have a certain kind of flow in life that just makes things easier. So that's I guess that's the overarching goal. And people can take that as far as they want to or as little as they want to, whether they just use it for just themselves or just certain times in their life, or if they want to read for other people and go out and do it in a bigger way. But that's I think the guiding principle
So
of
then
all of
it
it.
sounds like the flow is both good for tuning into people and situations, but also as a guiding principle for you yourself, meaning your life also tends to be more in flow and so then you make better
Absolutely.
decisions. And
Right.
even would you include the principle of attraction as well, in that being in that flow is in some sense protective and even maybe protective and productive for you as well? Would you say that?
Yeah, I mean it's all kind of the same kind of principle or the same kind of thing because so much of this has to do with energy, however you want to put it, energy, vibration, frequency, whatever that is. We all know like attracts like, right? And when you're
Mm,
in a flow state or you're in a state where and when you're, it seems like when you're in flow, you are kind of naturally tuned into and moving towards that which serves you, that which is good for you. Um, but that, yeah, so that I think it's all kind of intertwined because it is all about matching that frequency, matching that vibration. And that's where that, I think where all of the flow comes from, is that you're just kind of attracting the right stuff and things are flowing to you and flowing in a way that is just it it makes sense, and it also matches you where you are. Because I think sometimes you, maybe if you're just starting, you do have to go through a few things that aren't necessarily quote unquote positive, but they do serve you for the greater journey or for the greater good or where you're going. So yeah, and it helps you to understand things better, I think, because even when you hit a roadblock, you can kind of step back from it and get a different perspective right away rather than be lost in it and think what the hell is going on and that kind of thing. It just kind of gives that bigger, higher perspective, that's so helpful, especially going through difficult things.
right, right. It sounds like a, a sense of clear mind that moves toward the greater energy and perhaps away from your own, thoughts of yourself, and the constant churning of especially thoughts of the past or anticipated future thoughts, but instead, so there's more of a clear mind that then
Yeah, you hit it
makes.
on the head because so much of it is just overthinking stuff.
Right.
Overthinking it, whether you're jumbling it up with stuff from the past or you're worried about the future or there's fear stuff going on. A lot of it is just being able to look at things a little bit differently, and that's where that being connected in helps you to do that. It kind of helps you to pull back and see things for what they are or see things in a different way.
Mm,
Again, that will serve you the best. Um, and
right,
it
right.
came about because people, I mean, 9 times out of 10, people kept asking me, what's my life purpose? What's my life purpose? What's my life purpose? And we have the truth of, we have lots of purposes in our life. It's not just one thing. I think people always look for that one thing. It's so many things and it's so many people and so many situations. So I feel like this is the best way to guide you through it and figure out what all these things are and why you're here.
Right. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So, and I'm assuming that some people that approach you for this kind of mentoring, in some cases, it's to access the feeling or this type of mind to improve their connection to life, and then, in other words, making better decisions and so on. In some people's cases, it's because they want to tune into others and
Mhm.
perhaps read their energy, but they amount to the same thing. It doesn't matter. Both of these things
Yeah,
are approached through the same techniques, practices, right? Approach.
exactly right. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
what you intend to use it for, and that's kind of what you move towards, and also how you practice. If you intend to read for other people, you have to get out there and start reading for other people. You have to
Right.
practice it. If you're just doing it for yourself, then you would, I like I said, I give homework, so it's like, practice every day or something like that. So yeah.
Yeah. It's in astrology, the person's any person's true being is the sun, and the sun doesn't think. The sun just is. So the sun is conscious of thought, but isn't actually thinking. It's just being, and
Right.
then everything gets reflected in there So if a person practices being in some kind of way, it really doesn't matter what the practice is, as long as it's promoting being, rather than say doing, thinking, the sense that you're in a way blocking your own intuition, your own insight.
That's exactly right. In fact, it's so funny because I just got finished with some cards. I made my own cards. They're right here. I'll show you. But they're called Power of Intention cards,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a prayer on the back of each one. But it's so funny that you talk about that because this process took me 2 years, and the first year was just me trying to get in front of the sun, get in front of that just being. And I was overthinking it, and I was trying to take control over it in a way that, I could not figure. I knew there was something that I was supposed to be putting out, but I could not for the life of me figure out what it was. And I kept trying to think it up, think of an idea, think of the thing. And what I finally realized was that this wasn't something I could think about. It wasn't something I could think up. It was something that was going to come through exactly what you're talking about, just that consciousness of being. It was going to come through a different channel. And I had to really surrender the process and just let everything go and just trust it's going to come through when it comes through. And I had to get all of that stuff out of the way. And that is how it finally came through. And when it did come through, it was like, of course, that's what it is. I talk about intention all the time. That's exactly what it would be. And why didn't I? But it wasn't a thing to think up. It was a thing to have come through. It was a different channel that it came through. And every single prayer in the deck came through a different channel. And so that's exactly when you said that, I thought of that process of like, just get out of the way, get that ego and that personality and all that junk out of the way and just be there in consciousness and let it just come right through.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. It's like the doing part is to get out of the way. So then to just be
Yeah,
receptive to what is coming through. But there's still, at least in my understanding at first, there's a feeling of doing something. In due time maybe that disappears, hopefully, and it just happens spontaneously. But up to that point, if you're not actually doing it, then you're thinking, and if you're thinking, it's not going to happen, so you're caught by the loop. Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. Yeah. That makes a lot
Or
of
you or
sense.
you think of something, but then it doesn't quite come to fruition because it's
Mm.
not quite right or it falls apart at some point. And I think that anytime you're in that process, especially a creative process or a spiritual process, try to just surrender and let it go
Right.
and let it come in because it's there. And that's what's so frustrating, I think, is as people we want to take control of it and just do it. And it's like, no, it's almost like a birth because it's a much more natural process. And I think we try to force these things and make them happen in a very unnatural way. And I think it is such a natural process that we just need to get out of the way sometimes. And it's so much easier. I don't know why we do this to ourselves,
Yeah,
but
well,
it is
I
easier.
mean, it may be because it's sort of ultra simple, but not necessarily easy, because there are a lot of counter forces that are in there from previous ways of being. If you're doing this, if somehow you're connecting to this at a young age, and you keep repeating the same way of being, then it's natural. But if not, it means the other way is natural, and it's the way that is getting in your own way.
Right.
Essentially,
Conditioning.
yeah.
Yeah, we're conditioned. We get conditioned
Right.
sometimes and it seems like that's the right way, but then we need to uncondition ourselves and get back to just our more natural state.
That
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Well, I'll just say this. I fully endorse what you're doing. So whoever's watching this, connect with Kim and get some mentoring, because I think it's great.
Well, thank
Just to
you.
say that.
Thank you so
Yes.
much. I appreciate that.
So now, in terms of this, because now something that I'm curious about, I heard you either the last time or the time before that, in your connection to the political world, that we're all, I don't know, sadly or not, we're back into it again now. Feels like 8 years ago in a certain way. And you had intuited that that it in the Republican thing, the nomination, that it didn't seem to you that it would be Trump or DeSantis. And so what I'm wondering about is when you get that kind of intuition, could it happen that it then changes for you at a later point, or do you find that it tends to be more consistent when you get those?
That's the thing, is that energy can always change. So I mean, as we go up to I remember going up to the 2020 election, there were shifts in it, and it would shift with the way people, because it's individuals, but then it's a collective. And so it's a different, when you read on things like that, it really can kind of ebb and flow with what's happening in the news cycle, and because people change their mind and people kind of go back and forth. And so you're trying to read all of that. And so things can change, or energy can change. That's a weird one for me, because I would say, yeah, it can change. I mean, I'm sure something, unforeseen can happen, or something, that somebody does by free will can happen, but that one's weird, because that one I have seen for years. It hasn't been like just overnight. I mean, and it's not that the person that I'm feeling that it is more of a Pence type, that kind of Christian, that kind of type. And so to me, it doesn't feel like the energy of Trump or DeSantis. And I can't quite figure out who it is, because I don't even, maybe Chris Christie, somebody like that, or maybe Pence, or maybe, but I haven't really felt anybody exactly who it could be. And I thought what may be able to help me pinpoint is when they do the actual debates, because it may be more clear energy wise who it probably is. Right now, for whatever reason, I can't quite pinpoint the person, but the energy of the person does not feel like a DeSantis or a Trump, unless they change in some major way, that unless they turn around and say, which I don't think is going to happen.
Hell's going to freeze over. Yes, I know. Wait for that. Wait for the big change from DeSantis, and especially Trump. I mean,
right, exactly. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, he's not going to change his spot. So yeah, but that's a weird one for me, because that has been very, very consistent, and it's been such a long time that I've seen that. And so I just I can't do anything else but just say what I get, and that's what I'm getting. So
so
we'll
what
see
are
how it
you
shakes out. But
when your current what you're getting at the moment? It could just be that, or more than that. But what is your current focus around the whole scene? What's taking place? What have you been getting that is significant?
as far as just this stuff with Trump, or with the whole like political, like the whole Republican Party, the landscape, or
Well, or even the whole thing. I mean, because I think when people are looking at this, in the end, they say, well, okay, like what's going to happen here? Because there's Biden, and then the criticism is he's really old, but then there's Trump, and is it going to be Trump and Biden? And most of the country doesn't want that, but if it is, probably Biden has the advantage. Maybe, but there could be third parties. It's quite a dynamic situation, that we're in. So what's
yeah.
your sense of the whole thing?
Well, this fall and winter, I just felt was going to be like crazy. It was just going to be a shit show. It's just going to be kind of nuts. And I felt like a lot of things after the winter would kind of calm down a little bit, like almost like the dust settles a little bit, and we can see things a little more clearly, what's going to be going on. But I felt like I kept feeling something major with Russia and with China coming up, that was going to kind of solidify, for whatever reason, solidify the Democrats winning everything, because I felt like the Democrats would take everything again. And I felt like it wasn't, I mean, definitely certain things will assist, like the abortion thing people are angry about, the gun thing people are angry about. There's certain things that I think will assist, but I feel like the economy is going to be just doing really well in the United States. And there is something that happens in Russia and in China that seems like um, it it just solidifies the confidence in Biden and in the Democrats. And it at that point, it's just like it just feels like a freight train. Like there really isn't any stopping it.
Hmm.
Um, and I also feel like there's a few states they're going to have weird things happen. Arizona came up. Um, uh, what was the other state? Um, Tennessee came up.
Tennessee,
There were
wow.
just some weird things, Wisconsin, some weird things that came up for the states that I felt like people would be up in arms about, and it will like force out more Democrats to vote. There were just certain things like that that came up that I just thought this is going to be a really interesting election. But I felt like when as we get closer, things that happen kind of solidify people's respect for, but also their belief in what the Democrats are doing and trying to do.
Hmm. And so
The
then that would,
courts too came up. The courts came up. They just said the courts.
oh,
So
the
they're going to
courts.
be worried about the Supreme Court, I think. That's going to be another thing.
Hmm.
So
And all of it, and your feeling is all of it plays to Biden's advantage, despite these, this thing about how, I mean, he is getting really old, but on the other hand, I mean, you watch the guy, and every time they say, "Oh, he's too old," and then he does something that shows you he's quite awake. Like for instance, this latest thing when he said, "Oh no, Turkey is going to let Sweden. It's fine. It's going to happen." And
yeah,
lo and behold, there it goes. So with Biden, maybe
yeah.
he's sleepwalking through life, but things seem to be happening approximately the way he says.
I think it's a little bit like, do you remember when George W. Bush was in and it just seemed like, you know, he was, well, I won't use him as an example, but it
Yeah.
does seem like it would be so frustrating with George W. because he seemed so long for such a long time to be very much like Teflon. Things would just bounce, or Bill Clinton, where things would just kind of bounce off of him and kind of go his way. That's what I feel like with Biden. But I feel like with Biden, it's more his optimism. He does have a kind of what Trump does. Trump is like the evil optimist because he does believe in that power of um, positive thinking or whatever. But 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 Biden is a good optimist, and I do feel like that energy of optimism really does get him through a lot of things, and it also um, it it helps him to know what the next step is as well. It's really an interesting phenomenon because as Democrats, we usually don't have people like that who are just really seem like they just get stuff done. They just get stuff done. Um, a lot of times they'll get in and have really great ideas, but it will be really hard to get stuff done. Like Obama had such a hard time getting things done. He got a few things accomplished, but with Biden, it's like thing after thing after thing after thing. He just keeps getting it done. So they underestimate him. That's what it was. We constantly, I think, underestimated people like George W. Bush and stuff, and then they would pull out the stops and get stuff done. And I think with Biden, it's the same thing. They underestimate him all the time, and he just can get stuff done somehow, or brush things off somehow. Um, he is, but also he is a lifetime politician. So he's really good at politics and he's really good at foreign policy. So
Right.
I think people forget that about him because he's just kind of been around, forever. But he has been in politics for a very long time and he knows what he's doing. He's not a dummy. And he can run rings around someone like Trump, who's so out of his depth when it comes to politics and the way politics works and stuff. He's just not, he doesn't have the mind for it at all.
Mm.
It's a skill, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. And I know from the astrology, there's disagreement on this. There are astrologers who are a lot more pessimistic than I am about 2024 and beyond, and including that they'll look at Trump's chart and point to possible things. But when you really look at the entire panorama in Trump's chart, it is just devastatingly bad. It's not a good thing at all, especially in the context of what he's involved in, because these things that he's facing, these indictments, they're very serious. And so then if the solution is that he has to win the election, that's a total lottery, because he lost badly in 2020, despite the fact that he keeps saying that he won, which he didn't. I mean, the man is a
Right. He didn't
lying
win.
sack of all things foul. But the thing is, to go with that expectation, to me, is crazy. They would have to get some crazy series of events, like a third party or something along those
Right.
lines, which I don't see. Maybe you see it, maybe someone else sees it. I just don't see it. And so if I
Mhm.
compare Trump to Biden, it's not even close. Biden's chart, without being perfect, and it never is, because when these people are involved in big reaches like this, you get stress cycles and easy cycles. But in comparison, it's not even close. Trump's chart is actually especially vulnerable to health breakdowns, even though, again,
Really?
it seems made of Teflon. But I mean, to me, this kind of thing illustrates perfectly, that life adage that says things work really well until they don't. And eventually they
Right.
don't. This happened to John Gotti in the 90s, that thug gangster. They couldn't convict him. He would figure out ways to, it was even worse than Trump. He would literally buy the jury off or threaten them.
Right.
But eventually, in fact, as I think is happening to Trump, you notice with Trump, slowly but surely, the people around him, because they don't want to go to jail or be implicated, they start to tell on him, basically. And then that's what happened to Gotti. One of his closest allies sold him out. And then, Gotti never got out of prison after that. His life went from, he was this dapper Don, really famous character. Complete opposite after that. So for a while, it looked, he's invincible. People like even actors, I remember Anthony Quinn, who had a bit of a gangster thing himself. He would go to court to watch him. They were also fascinated with this invincible person. Yeah, you're invincible, but in the American rule of law, if the feds indict you, you have a big problem, because they have a
Right.
lot of incentive to convict you. And so now the only thing is, can he extend, like Trump is already, you probably heard the latest is they're trying to delay the trial, because there's no way he wants the trial to happen anytime before the election. That's just way too risky. So he's trying to somehow delay it. By the way, do you see anything there with Eileen Cannon, and that she step in and do the same crazy thing that she did last time, where they had to rebuke her for being so incredibly partisan?
Yeah. Let me see. Cannon. It's interesting. So I'm getting this same image. I have this image of when I've asked about this case, I get this image of Jack Smith sitting with a stack of papers in front of him and kind of straightening the papers like that. And I think that I feel like everything's in place. Every scenario that could happen, they have figured out a way to combat it, or
Mm.
to make it so that it doesn't hold things up or stop things. And I feel like she's one of them. So I feel like if she pushes their hand in some way, or she pushes them in some way, they will try to get her removed. So I just feel like, but I get that same image every time when I ask about this case. It just feels like we've got everything in order. Don't worry about a thing. We've thought of everything and we're ready to go. I just feel like they're prepared. They know what they're doing. They're in charge. They're and they've thought of everything. I feel like they've really thought of every scenario because of who Trump is and because of how he has intimidated witnesses, and he has, paid for people's lawyers, and I mean, they know all his same old tricks. It's the same tricks: delay, you know, pay for people's stuff, try to get people to, not to flip or what. It's the same old playbook, and I feel like they know exactly what they're going to do at every turn. And I just feel like, don't worry about it. I do feel like they might get offer some sort of plea that has to do with him dropping out of the race.
Oh,
Whether he will or not, I don't know. But I do feel like there may be some kind of plea deal that they may offer him at some point, um, to get him out of the race, to at least make sure he's not going to be in the running for president again, ever.
that's, it's interesting because I heard Chris Christie, who is, the main now Trump antagonist, and the way he's expressing himself. I wish the other people would join. I mean, just because it's
Right,
just the truth of things. And he said that,
right.
he's an ex-prosecutor who knows how the game is played, and he said that when you're federally indicted, they will offer you a plea of some kind. But if you don't take the plea, then there is no way out. Then you will be
That's
sentenced and
it.
you'll go to jail, and there is no mercy. It's part of the way the system is set up. But normally you'd think a guy like Trump, I mean, how does he accept anything? He doesn't accept anything. He's like the non-acceptance incarnation. Everything is
Right.
rebellion and pushback and oppositional behavior, like a teenager almost to everything. So,
And they've really put themselves in a corner because they were so upset about Hunter taking a plea deal. So for Trump to turn around and take a plea deal, it would be bad on all fronts. It would just not be for his image. It would probably be the best thing for him, but to keep him out of jail if he wants that. But for his image, it would be awful, in every way, because he'd be admitting wrongdoing, he'd be dropping out of the race, he'd be hopping a plea, he'd be, so all these things. So I don't know, it'd be very interesting. And that's one of those things where it's like I can see the deal, but how he responds is free will. So closer to that time, we might be able to tell which way he is most likely to go. But right now, all I can do is I can see they're trying to put together a deal of some kind but it has, part of it is him dropping out. So we'll see. At least
well,
that's what I'm getting. So
yeah, no, it's not all that different from my own sense of this too, because Trump he's in a really super tricky spot right now in July, August, September. His astrology is at this point where there is major payback in play and also a major switch. And what I've noticed about switches in this case, when something has been a certain way and then like for example, in astrology, there's this thing that happens every 30 years in your internal dynamics, lunations, the sun, moon, they're moving after your birth and they make
mhm.
full moons, new moons. Well, his last new moon was right around when he tried to extort Ukraine. And that was a really stupid move. The
Oh,
way he did that, there's no way you can say that's a good move. He said perfect call and all that. That was actually the beginning of his decline, really major decline, right? Because after that, he gets impeached. Then we go into the pandemic. Things didn't work out. The whole thing just
right,
unraveled. So when you see a new moon
right.
like that, you realize this guy is not well attuned to the new beginning. I mean, his new beginning is catastrophically bad. Well, now in August, I mean, a month away from now, there's a switch that of something in the chart that has been the same also for the last, like, since the 1980s. And what it's switching to in the context of his situation is not good at all. So then I'm thinking, well, how can this be good? And then when I realized, well, am I hearing that Jack Smith is thinking of maybe charging, and then there's Fonnie Willis, and August is looking pretty tricky, right? So none of
Yes.
that to me would give me any confidence if in his shoes. but sometimes, when you do this enough, you start to doubt your own. That's why I
Yes, you
ask other
do.
readers to say, like, are you seeing the same thing? Are you noticing that this thing may be downtrending pretty badly? So yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, of course, you can always point to certain patterns are positive in his chart, but when you have one or two positive things surrounded by massive negativity, that astrology never works out. The person I always bring up to remind people as well as astrologers, so to speak, is
Mhm.
Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff, by the time he
Mm.
got in real trouble, there were really a couple of really helpful aspects, but the bulk of it was bad. So all the aspects did is just like sort of walk him into prison, and he never got out of that. That was the end of his life, right?
That was it.
Because there was an
And
accountability.
he's a good example too of how you can you can hum along for a while, but eventually your number is up, your luck runs out.
Right.
Especially when you're doing negative things. I think it is just a matter of time before negativity comes back on you
Exactly.
and puts you in your place. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me
Exactly. Yeah.
ask you something. Can I ask you something, Andre? So I have gotten these messages about um, the kind of the lessons for the collective lessons for not just the United States, but kind of for the world. And they keep showing that um, Trump and Putin in very parallel lives, and I feel like they're and so far it has been that way because their height was kind of the same time.
Hmm.
Their fall is happening around the same time. And I think the big fall is about to come for both of them.
Hmm.
Crash, basically.
Hmm.
And then also I feel like they'll pass. They'll leave, you know, leave the earth around the same time. I feel like they're very parallel, almost like I don't know what you'd call them, kind of twin souls or something's going on with I don't know what the spiritual thing going on with them is, but I do feel like there's this these lessons we are supposed to learn from these two individuals and that they really are in sync. Is there something to back that up in astrology?
You
Those
mean,
two being kind of parallel?
well, if you look at, there probably is it's something I haven't done where I really tried to connect the two of them and see if, they're through the planets, their karma is linked. But just
Right,
separately, what we already are seeing, that I have said many times that Putin's chart is not doing well, and neither is he.
right,
What you expect. And it's not going to get better. It just isn't. There are too many problems, and this thing is going to accelerate. They both
right,
show, and now because you said they're going to disappear, they have health stuff for sure. Now, a lot
right,
of that
right.
with Putin is more rumors, we don't know, but it's definitely there. You also see it in Trump.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, I would say, even without doing a deeper dive to see if, I mean, as you put it, they're twin souls. We sort of know they are just by the way that,
yeah.
they're both, I mean, I'm sorry, what do you call these people? These are people with the, a disconnect from humanity. I mean, they're
Amoral, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah, just
immoral
not.
and yeah,
Yeah, just
exactly. It's sort of a breed of people that, reminds me of watching the accounts of the Second World War, and when they were trying all those Nazi thugs, one of them literally in the middle of the trial said, "Well, I don't relate to morality the way you do. I don't care about those things." After
right,
which they convicted him and they hung him. So, I mean, maybe
right.
you
Well,
should, maybe just even on account of common sense, why don't you relate to morality so you can stay
right,
alive?
right. Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, it's this kind of
Smart.
thinking where you throw everything out the window and relate to your own code of ethics where you exclude everybody else. But then
Yeah.
when I consider these things too, I'll think, well, okay, so if this is like the big question where I'll say, well, so we're all one being, so the Great Spirit creates everyone, we're all here. Why does the Great Spirit create people like Trump and Putin?
What's
But
going on?
yeah, exactly. So to my mind, it's as though the way the world evolves, you need characters like this to, in a sense, through yes, there's destruction and there's a lot of suffering, but then the world progresses somehow. It learns something, and things move forward. That's what came out of the Second World War, as horrible as it was.
Right.
It led to many years of prosperity on some level. I mean, no one is ever happy, but by most accounts, more people have gained more freedom since
Right.
the middle of the last century. This is where I disagree with the gloom and doom predictions, where people are looking at the current time, which is really hard. But to my mind, yes, it's tricky, and let's hope it's not going to turn into the 1860s where everybody's shooting at everybody, or at least
Right.
even armies, killing a lot of people. But it is tense. It's tense, and to my mind, it'll lead to more freedom if we're patient and we stay the course. It's that
Right.
simple, as I understand it, and it'll mean.
I think you're right. I absolutely I share your optimism because I do feel like although there is a really loud, really I guess hateful minority that are just really I don't agree with so many things that they want to do and they want to have people have less freedom and they want to have I do just feel like it is a minority. Most people just are good people that just want to live their lives, just want to work, just want to raise a family, just want to have a place to live. And I think most people, that is most people. I think this kind of loud, freaked out, fearful minority are having kind of a last gasp, and a lot of them are older people. They're kind of in the last throes of their life, and they don't like that the world has changed so much. It scares them, and so and they're loud for sure. They're loud, and they have people that represent them on TV and whatever, and politicians that represent them. But I think that's why I like you. I'm optimistic because the majority of people, I think the majority of people in the world are just nice people that just want to have whatever, have love, have work, have meaningful work, have love in their life, just very basic things. Um and don't see the world as this place of scarcity and I've got to get mine and if every man for himself. I don't think that is the case. I think most people like the idea of community, like the idea of working together, like the idea of sharing and people and helping other people. You see it every time there's a disaster. More people come out to help,
Mhm.
that then, are everybody comes out to help everybody and nobody is asking what color are you or what party do you belong to. They're just helping. And
Mhm.
so I really do feel like when push comes to shove, that's where everything will land. I mean, I have to think that, but I also feel it. I also just feel that COVID changed a lot of people. Natural disasters are changing a lot of people. We're being thrown into these very heavy circumstances to learn these very simple lessons of caring and sharing, loving each other. Very simple things, but I think we're being pushed, and I think people are seeing it. You know,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It really does. And in any case, the numbers, the measurements back that up. And this is the thing that, if you think of this, and it kind of is, politics is like sports. And I've followed sports all my life. And, I can take to the bank that if you're following two players or two teams, usually the better team wins. I mean, they might lose, but
right,
don't
right,
don't place a bet on the other team or on the lesser player. It's pretty
right,
clear here which team is better and has better odds. Not just better because it's more moral and more truthful. The numbers tell you.
right,
There's a consistent polling that in the 50s. Whenever you think of Biden, Biden's true numbers are always higher than 52, 53%, maybe even as high as 55. And
right,
people like Trump and probably anyone else in that party, given what they've done too, in terms of their relationship to women and guns and all the rest, at best they're high 40s. So then the only thing is, unless you are proposing we all start shooting at each other again, then you have to defeat them at the ballot box. There's no other way. You have to show
right.
up and vote, which has, by the way, been the big problem with the Democratic Party. We're in
Hmm.
this jam because Democrats sometimes just don't show up. They don't bother to vote.
Exactly.
That's what happened in 2016. It happened in 2000, the whole thing. So
Yeah.
To my mind, that's all you need to focus on. And if you were to add anything, maybe it would be that along the lines of what we talked earlier about the kind of mind you keep. If you stay out of fear, keep yourself focused on we're gonna do this. It's gonna be fine. It's not
Right.
just woo woo. You're actually holding that mind, and all the people that are holding that mind, they're holding it with you, and you make it more likely that it'll turn out this way. The last thing you want to do is sit around worried, oh my God, Trump's going to get us, or, the whole thing is going
Yeah.
to fall apart. No, don't think that way. Think, focus positively,
Yeah.
and then that has force and may even incline some people to vote that wouldn't vote, because the energy's out there that way. So, yeah,
Yeah,
we're in line.
absolutely.
I'm glad we're in
I
agreement.
wholeheartedly agree with that. I mean, yeah, keeping that that idea of, because you've got to counter it, right? Because these are the people that are kind of in this are very, very fearful. They're in that fear mentality, and it's not a it's not sustainable, and it's also not a healthy energy to be in, and it's a very short-lived, you know energy. When you match it with something like love or something like compassion, it's not even in the same. It is not nearly as far reaching and as sustainable as those are. I don't know if you've ever had things where you've been so angry, you burn out. I mean, it's kind of like your all your energy goes and you're just like, oh, you're, and that is what anger, that's, you're feeling the energy of anger. It can shine bright for a bit and then it kind of diminishes. And same with fear. It makes you want to curl up and hide away. That is what the energy does. So it's a different, it's a and then when you feel something like love and compassion, where you just feel this endless need to give and to help and those kinds of things, you're feeling what that energy is. You're feeling what that feels like. And that's, if you're going to match them, that's what you're up against. And so it's just not, in my mind, like you said, bringing it, whether you're looking at it spiritually or scientifically, or you're looking at it just as practically, um, there's no contest. There just isn't.
Right, right. Makes perfect sense. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly it. So, I mean, it's just that in a way, though, you see, it's this, we're both speaking of something we intuit. So then, and intuition is this really mysterious word because people, say, what is intuition? And, well, you could answer, well, you find it when you're not looking for it, or just be, and then it'll come to you. But they all
Yeah.
seem like, they seem like these platitudes, so to speak. But yeah, that's 100%
Yeah.
true. Yeah,
That's
and you're
right.
totally right that when you look at the people like Trump or his followers, they're sort of doing the opposite of that. They're creating this hemmed in energy where it's all I, my, me, and there's fear associated with that, and
Yeah,
aggression, fear,
absolutely.
aggression. All the qualities that are, in a sense, spirit upside down.
Yeah.
Best way to put
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
absolutely. And you can just go back in history. Look at Napoleon, look at Hitler, look at, I mean, there's a bazillion people you could look at and you see what happens. You know this story. We've seen it before. We know
Yes.
how this ends. It's just a matter of how long, those kinds of things that we have to kind of contend with, how, those things, but we know where this is going. We've seen it before. We keep seeing it all through history. We see it. So,
It's true.
but we
Yeah.
keep trying out these energies for some reason and, having to learn these lessons. Hopefully this will be one of the last times because it's getting old.
Well, at least for a while. I mean, the problem is that
At
we
least for
get,
a
yeah,
while.
at least for, so you can get some rest, like maybe a decade or two, so that we're not constantly grappling with this kind of insanity. But yeah, no, what you say makes a lot of sense because when you look at these historical figures, they're almost always, in fact, I would say always, people that they go on a certain path, but they're not very smart. When you really look at what they're doing, they're so centered on their ego that by your own
Mhm.
logic too, they don't get the guidance. So then
Right.
they make some decisions that work, and then curiously too, they're usually the people that become the most superstitious. So for example, in Hitler's
Mm.
history, he would interpret something as a sign that things were working when actually it was a sign that they weren't working, right? But
Oh,
he thought, well,
interesting.
this means, that like, at one point, a year soon before he died, before he committed suicide, they tried to kill him and he survived. So he interpreted it as, well, this is the universe, God, the Great
Right.
Spirit, signaling to me that I'm on the right track. But his generals were saying, "No, we're losing the war.
We try. Someone
This
tries to
is
kill
not
you.
working." What do you mean? We're gonna no. I mean, and
Right.
this is Trump's thing too. That I mean, he's all in on. They asked him a day or two ago about in Nevada. He's in Nevada, and they said to him, "Well, you lost the Nevada in 2016 and 2020,
Mhm.
and you lost the votes of the suburban women, some story like that." And he said, "No, I didn't. I won Nevada in 2016 and in 2020, both times." I mean,
I mean,
how delusional do you have to be? But then my next, what I extrapolate from that is, okay, look, he's bad, but if you're following him, what does that say about you? You know, where are you that you would
right?
accept this kind of behavior? And the amazing thing is, for now, it's maintaining a certain flow for him. But in a certain way, it's probably the worst thing that could happen to the Republican Party as well, because it limits their chances with the broader electorate as well, right?
Well,
So,
and it gets as it goes on, this idea of I didn't lose, no, I didn't, no, I did. It gets crazier and crazier as time goes on. It's like, let it go. He won't even just not talk about it or just let it go. He keeps saying it, and it's like everybody knows that's not true, dude. Most people in your party now are kind of like, let's just move on. He didn't win. What is good? But it sounds crazier and crazier the more he does it. So
well,
I
it's
don't get
interesting
it.
though. If we were to take something from, if we go back to, okay, so we're all one being. The one being is creating people like this, and he's creating everyone else. So, but they do show you something. Trump shows you something really valuable if you apply that principle on the upside, meaning he's just relentless. He has this vision of what he thinks is happening, or what he wants to see happen, and he pushes and drives, and nothing stops him. If you do that on the high end, it'll work really well. So,
Right.
that's highly recommended. A person that can elicit that kind of will and just keep going. It's
Right.
impossible to fail. But then you'll be getting the assistance of the greater spirit, which he's not. I think, my feeling of Trump is he is. I watch sometimes crime shows, and I notice Saturn is always the planet that the police knocks on the door and says we
All
have
right.
DNA, whatever, right? Because it's the accountable, and that's what he's facing now. No matter what else is going on in the chart, Saturn is in his face. It is
Oh,
not
wow.
good, not good at all, because and in fact, it's at a point that is at odds, or like bringing in the challenge of what he started in 2016, essentially. So the whole thing is coming back to him, at this point in his life.
That is
It's really, really
incredible.
hard to surmount. It's the logic that all the evidence is against you, all your karma, all the actions you've taken have come back,
Right.
to
Right.
haunt.
Right. I mean, and that's exactly what he's facing right now, is just that onslaught of everything coming back on him. He can't outrun it anymore. And I also think too, like you said, they're not very smart. They tend to have a couple of new ideas, but then they just do them over and over and over again. And pretty soon people catch on and they're like, well, that's not going to work anymore. And that's like Trump. I'm like, he's not doing anything all that genius. He just keeps doing the same things over and over again. Like I said, delaying, lying. I mean, he's had the same playbook since the 1980s. And I think that he just is so willing to, like you said, just keep going, keep going, keep going, pressuring, whatever it takes. And I think people have been a little stumped as to how to combat someone that just literally has no morals and no boundaries and doesn't care, will just do and say whatever. But like you said, the law is different. It works under different rules. It works under it's a completely different animal. And it's going to catch up with you at some point. It's not something you can really outrun or outmaneuver forever.
Yeah,
Even
yeah,
if you had a few tricks, it's just not gonna happen.
yeah. I agree with you 100%. I remember that when he was elected, the vision I got is that he had just walked himself into a major labyrinth, that it was going to cost him everything, because I don't think he was trying to win, and then he won. And of course, a person like this, when they win, then they think, oh well, this means the universe, the great thing is
Right.
I'm the one. No, you're not.
Yep.
And so then no one knew how bad he really was. I mean, he's bad. I thought he was just corrupt, and on the business level, he's like corrupt
Right.
all the way to the
Through and
the edge of the
through.
solar system.
Yeah.
He's beyond corrupt. So then, when you think of what he's in now, in a way, the problems he has, where they're suing him for things that he's done in his business and all of that, which is what people were talking about Trump being vulnerable to after his presidency. Well, yeah, but they're all the crimes he committed while he was president and after he left the
Right.
presidency. He's like a crime machine, and that's in the last 8 years. It's not even talking about before that. All of these things that are
Right.
being transacted now are from that, even many from the last 2 years, because the documents, the fact that I hear Jack Smith is looking into when he was raising money illegally, because you're not allowed to raise money from people and tell them it'll be for something other than what it will be for. They can charge you with mail fraud and all kinds of things that you can end up in jail for. So all of that is after he left the presidency. So
I mean, he's like you said, he's a crime machine. And have any of your charts seen him going to jail? Is there that possibility?
it's interesting that Linda always says that she doesn't see him in jail. She just sees him defanged, dethroned, up to his eyeballs in court appearances, which we're already starting to see. The thing is that the jail connection in the chart, it's there, but jail can mean jail where you're behind, bars and sequestered, or it can just mean stopped, sequestered in some other way. So, for example,
Right.
one of the things that many have mentioned is that he might have to do time in Mar-a-Lago with an ankle monitor or something like that. That's a
Oh, right.
possibility. Or some other thing. But the bottom line is that that particular section of the chart, when things, when you meet your patterns, your karma, it's the idea of being stopped and destroyed. Basically, it's the worst possible
Right.
area.
Right.
So it could be jail, but it doesn't have to be. It
Right.
could be something else. It amounts to the
Interesting.
same thing, though.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess
Interesting.
we've covered quite a bit of ground. Fun
I
as
say we
always.
solved all the world's problems
Yeah, we did. We've
again.
solved them all. Well, no, in a way, though, I think the takeaway for me is to, basically to state emphatically that we've got to keep our mind on the task at hand, and it means staying positive, staying focused, voting, and keeping that outlook. I think is really important, both to get it done, but also just to feel good, which is, you know,
Absolutely.
part of it as well, right?
Absolutely. I think, yeah, if we all do our bit, we'll get it done,
Right.
and that's the way it is,
It
and
is.
keep that, like you said, keep that energy high and positive. Just try to maintain positivity. Step away from the news. I had to do that last week. I thought this is taking days off my life. I know it is because I'm just so angry with the Supreme Court that I had to step away for it. So I downloaded 2 seasons of Parks and Rec, and I'm just like, I'm just going to pretend it's 2012, and I'm not going to,
Yeah,
and
I
I'm
can
just
tell.
going to bury
That's funny.
myself, and that's it.
Yeah,
So
that's.
yeah, so step away when you need to.
I know. You often can tell. I can tell when I need to step back, when I find myself walking around the house cursing because of something
Yeah.
I'm seeing, somebody say or do, or some outrageous thing. So yeah, it makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah,
All right, that was
exactly.
fun. I look forward to our next
Thank you,
meeting.
Andre. Thank you.
All right.